Hello everyone, my name is Lindsay Schmidt. Today is June 29th, 2025, and I am making this for Criminal Justice Systems for the summer semester. So the first thing we were asked to do, come up with 5 facts. So I'm going to go to the statistical briefing book, scroll down here to frequently asked questions. So first topic is youth population characteristics. Scroll again. So our first fact, there are 3 million Americans under 18, so that's about 1 in 5. And then we have a table breaking it down between gender and race, all right here, and then we can see the different age groups starting at 0 going all the way up to age 17. So that is our first fact. And then for our second fact, we're going to go back to frequently asked questions, and then we're going to go to youth as victims. Scroll down again, frequently asked questions. So what are the different types of child maltreatment? This is basically just going over the different child maltreatment that are possible for children. So we've got medical neglect, deprivation of necessities like food, physical abuse, psychological or emotional maltreatment, sexual abuse, and sex trafficking. So those are just our different types of child maltreatment that can be committed. For our second fact, and then for our third fact, back to topics. And then we're going to go to offending by youth. And then for our third fact, 1,122 murderers in the US in 2020 were committed by juvenile offenders. And then if you go down here, we have our table. So in 2020, we did see a spike compared to recent years, but it is less than what it started out at in 1980. Go back again. So law enforcement, youth, and crime. Questions. And so for our fourth fact, about 424,300 people were arrested under the age of 18, which was 71% less than the number of arrests in 2011, but still a pretty high number of arrests for juveniles. So that is our fact number 4. And then fact number 5, we're going to youth infections. So there were 7,036 17-year-olds in residential placement. And then if you scroll down here, we can see how many and what age were placed in residential placement. 17 was the highest, which is not super surprising. It's right before adulthood, so a lot of teenagers think that they can be independent and by themselves. So for the next part, we were asked to ask 3 questions. And so my first question was basically how many juveniles that committed crimes were a marginalized group. And so if we search right here, Black youth accounted for 42% of the youth held in residential placement for 2021. So almost half of the juveniles held in residential placement were Black. And then for our second question, wrong one. Wrong one again. Here we go. So my second question was what age are they held in residential placement? What age is the most popular? Like stated earlier, 17, not super surprising. Also, it goes on to explain like the COVID-19 pandemic began in 2020, which is why a lot of times this was taken in 2021. So why 17 was so highly affected because they were going through COVID at the age of 16. And then for our third question, we're going to go back again. We're going to go to youth as victims. Questions. So we taught child maltreatment earlier, and this was just kind of asking questions about people that did commit child maltreatment and the victims of child maltreatment. So in 2022, they took a survey, and about 1/3 of the victims were under age 4 whenever they were committed against. So really, really sad, but unfortunately, that is the statistic. And then the next thing we were asked to look at was the juvenile justice system structure topics. Juvenile justice structure and processes. So basically, this is just kind of explaining why juveniles would go through the justice system in the process of going to adult court. So for me, the main reason is obviously to protect the public. The juvenile justice system is really big on rehabilitation, and when a juvenile's not seen as being able to be rehabilitated, they're oftentimes just waived right into adult court. This is our case to flow diagram. So it's going to start with a delinquent behavior, then referral, intake and diversion, transfer waiver, detention, then adjudication, disposition, juvenile corrections, and then right here we have our aftercare release. So we were talking about the funnel effect earlier. Each case oftentimes drops down. So instead of a snowball effect where it keeps getting bigger, the funnel effect is kind of the opposite. So each case kind of drops down each thing because it's not going to go through every step. And if you scroll down here, we can see that, like stated right here, less than half, 46% of all cases referred to juvenile court intake are handled informally. So about 54% of them aren't. So it kind of just explains our snowball effect again. We might start out at law enforcement and go to prosecution, but then we might not make it into the intake or formal processing.